We just had a Super Bowl. We're running late. You know how we do. It's all good. It's all great. In the house today on Season 2, Episode number 5, is our very special guest, Mr. John Chase.
Yes.
Yes. I'm honored to have this gentleman here. I'm going to brief you on this gentleman's bio, and then we're going to get into what's happening in the news. We have Mr. John Chase, a retired mechanical engineer. What's fascinating about this gentleman and where I met him was literally on the campaign trail for the legalization of medical marijuana right here in Florida. So here's Mr. Chase's bio, and you can file this away as probably our best show to date because he's going to touch on topics that most of us, quite frankly, take for granted. But we have a bio on Mr. John Chase. Attended public schools in Pinellas County between 1947 and 1952. He has a BS degree in mechanical engineering from Rice University of Houston, Texas. And then for 3 years aboard the U.S. naval destroyer based in San Diego during the Cold War. For 32 years, he worked as an engineer at Honeywell in Pinellas County, Florida, and retired in 1992. Then, with another entrepreneur, Mr. Chase patented a new method for cleaning surgical instruments. During 1998, Mr. Chase went online and found the damage being caused by the drug war. He connected with Nora Callahan, the ED of the November Coalition, a national organization based in Washington whose mission is to help the families of drug prisoners by rolling back the drug war. She lists Mr. Chase as an advisor. He spent 1998 to 1999 building a large library of books about prohibition and the drug war. He also petitioned for an initiative to legalize medical marijuana with Florida's for Medical Rights. In February of 99, at Jeb Bush's first drug summit, he met Jody James, the ED of Florida Cannabis Action Network. He began writing letters to editors using the resources at the MAP, M-A-P, mapinc.org. Check this out. If you want to be professional in doing your research and letter writing like Mr. Chase, take advantage of this resource, which has been in production for many years. It's invaluable. www.mapinc.org, whose mission was, and still is, to educate the public about the drug war with facts. Since then, Mr. Chase has averaged almost one published letter per month in English-speaking newspapers, mostly in the U.S. He also began speaking at Rotary clubs and Unitarian Universalist churches who would have him speak about the drug war. In 2002, he became deeply involved in the local cause of one Richard Richard Pay, the wheelchair-bound Hudson man sentenced to 25 mandatory for using too much Percocet to control pain from a botched back surgery. Mr. Chase worked behind the scenes, and his most important contribution was introducing Richard's wife, Linda, to Saboyan Reynolds, the ED of the Pain Relief Network. Saboyan took the story national. It was after a segment on 60 Minutes that things began to change, especially after Charlie Crist became governor in 2007. So, this gentleman who Mr. Chase assisted with when no one else was really helping him beyond his legal counsel, after 3.5 years in prison, Governor Crist granted Pay a full pardon. John was there in the cabinet room for that. So this is someone who literally worked on the front lines of the drug war and helped free a political prisoner of the drug war, a wheelchair-bound gentleman who was medicating with legal prescribed over-the-counter Percocets. From 2007 to 2012, he continued to write about the social damage being caused by the drug war and what we might do to reduce it all. In about 2009, he became aware of PUFM, People United for Medical Marijuana, and their efforts to legalize marijuana as medicine. But he never became active because he thought it had no chance. Again, like so many of us, myself since 1993 fighting this fight, this is a very intelligent gentleman, a very well-read and well-researched gentleman. He knew how hard it would be and how hard it is to fight for your right to use a plant to heal your own body. Besides the main damage of the drug war that was being caused by the selective enforcement of anti-drug law, minorities, and the poor. So basically, he became active because he knows firsthand how much damage is being done to real people, our brothers, our sisters, our aunts, our uncles, our grandparents, our children, our neighbors in Florida, all across America, and quite frankly, all across the world because of the world's longest lasting, and in my opinion, deadliest war, the one that destroys families, not soldiers. In 2012, he came across a couple of published papers that concluded that the 16 states at the time having medical marijuana laws saw a reduction in traffic fatalities and beer consumption in the first year of legalization, and no significant increase in kids' use of marijuana. It was a light bulb moment for Mr. Chase because it weakened opponents' mantras and narrative about public safety and what about the kids. Finally, liberalization looked, what is this, Adobe? Doable. Okay. Oh, yeah. So after that, the science started coming out. The legalization looked doable and would greatly reduce the wealth of the illegal trade. Better half of a loaf than no loaf at all, he thought. So when he reconnected with Jody James, he started attending local PUFM meetings, PUFMM meetings, and sat in on court proceedings on local marijuana defendants. Then in early 2013, when John Morgan jumped in to help, he knew it could happen. So he volunteered to work with Bianca Garza, the regional coordinator for the United for Care organization, which coalesced with PUFM, and with the financial assistance from supporters like John Morgan and donators and the citizens like Mr. Chase and myself who volunteered our time to fight the good fight, we petitioned. I saw John everywhere I went. He was there all day petitioning, working hard, answering questions, and he's going to share his experiences of what happened on the campaign trail. But that's pretty much it. We're headed for the ballot. Mr. Chase just turned 80, and he is finally feeling accomplished and ready to slow down. So that's why we're so glad to have this man here today. We're going to roll with what's happening in the news and our new bit called Buzzkill. So what's happening in the news is we have a super funky bowl going on, and by no small karmic coincidence, both the Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks have states which have recently legalized medical marijuana. And you know how I feel about that word. I hate it. I prefer the word cannabis. I don't like to use government-made-up lie words, but it's accepted. Marijuana. That's the word. But anyways, let's share some of the pictures because there's controversy regarding the Super Funky Bowl because, as you know, we're all crying and weeping and our heartstrings are being tugged by the behemoth anti-cannabis giant Anheuser-Busch with their shows, their commercials with puppies and dogs and soldiers and veterans. They really know how to jerk around America's heartstrings and make it seem like alcohol's all warm and fuzzy and it's okay. And every 3 seconds you're going to see a commercial about alcohol. And we're in the midst of an alcohol holocaust because it kills people. And we know how dangerous it is. But hey, alcohol's okay with the NFL because it makes big money and we run the show. Well, on that. So people driving to Giants Stadium today are going to be seeing both pro and con billboards. And these are great because you have the one side of the agenda where they're outright lying and talking about how bad cannabis is. And then you have the pro-cannabis people who are simply using government facts on how safe cannabis is versus alcohol. So that's what's going on right now. It's great. This is the biggest television opportunity and the biggest visual opportunity for America to be witness to the gift of ganja that God gave us. Literally, the earth was made, a plant put on it, and then people set free to partake of it. And anyone who's against it is pretty nasty, in my opinion. That's what this show is about. If you're tuning in right now, it's the Captain Cannabis Show, and our special guest is Mr. John Chase, drug war veteran, fighting on the front lines for many years. That's it on the Super Bowl. People are waking up. They're seeing the truth. I hope everyone plays and parties safe, and there's no crazy stuff going on in the streets like after many sports events. I don't think that's going to happen in Colorado or Washington. I don't think that a population partaking of the plant is going to riot in the streets and turn cars over. Let's hope everything's safe, and the only thing that gets raided is refrigerators for more brownies and nachos and good hemp-loving treats. That's it. Very brief on what's happening in the news. It's all about the Super Funky Bowl and how people are being exposed to, for the first time ever, big billboards and prominent advertisements touting the truthful, healthful benefits of our beloved plant. And to close what's happening and to let our special guest, Mr. Chase, take over, we have a new segment called Buzzkill. Let's run that, please. Boom. What Buzzkill is one of our roving reporters gets a news headline talking about cannabis in a bad light, and using facts and science, we research it, determine who that liar is, state who that lying publication is, and state what they're lying about. And today's Buzzkill is about a woman from the UK who was reported to have overdosed on cannabis, which, according to every medical study, has been disproven. It's simply an impossibility. Really, the only way that I know that weed could kill you is when a smuggler in Mexico crashed with 500 pounds of cannabis bricks in his car, and the weight in his vehicle helped him get crushed in the impact. But the reason why this beautiful woman, God rest her soul, is in the news is because she's pretty, and people are going to talk about it as though she's a victim of cannabis. That's not possible. If you search, you will see that every doctor who knows what they're talking about, and obviously whoever stated she overdosed just doesn't know what they're talking about. And that's part of the problem. That's part of the struggle is regarding these doctors is they've never worked with hemp. They've never studied it. They've never tried it. They've never tested it. They don't talk to their patients about it because it's illegal. They were trained and lied to sell their drugs with their chemicals in them based from petroleum, and everything's fine. Meanwhile, before that type of mind thought of Western medicine took over and was popularized for millennia, mankind has safely used cannabis. So that's pretty much the buzzkill. Mother poisoned to death by smoking marijuana. Just Google that. You'll see the truth. This is not possible. The worst thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to pass out and sleep, and your body's going to heal and put those powerful compounds to work. So that's it. That's what's happening in the news. The Super Funky Bowl. People are getting exposed to both the propaganda lies as well as truthful billboards and online advertisements. And of course, you've seen the many viral images going around Facebook as to what's going on with our beloved football event. Don't overindulge in alcohol. You can't possibly overindulge in cannabis if you're sitting at home chilling. You'll be fine and safe. So let's get into it, Mr. Chase.
Yes.
I'm so glad to have you here.
Well, I'm glad to be here. It's been a long time. I've been at this now for 15 years, and I got a fairly slow start because I started from zero because I didn't know anything. And I knew I was going to talk to people about it and write letters to the editor, which I was going to do. I had to learn. And See, that was in '98. I started to build that library that you mentioned, and I have probably 10 feet of books now.
Wow.
Of course, we do it online now, but in those days,
Yeah.
it was easier to do it with books. And one of my favorite books, probably my most favorite book, is one written by the woman who was in charge of enforcing prohibition from 1920 until 1928, and she quit. she has a checkered career. She quit to help Herbert Hoover get reelected in 28. In the summer of 28, she toured mainly Methodist churches. I can mention that. That was before the Methodists hooked up with the United Brethren, so it was not the United Methodist Church. So it was somewhat harsher church than what we have today. And she, after Hoover was elected, she quit, and she went to work for the California Wine Growers Association, which tells you a little bit of something. She has a name. It's hard to forget. It was Mabel Walker Willebrandt. And if you Google that name, you'll come up with a lot of stuff, even though that happened a long time ago. So anyhow, I did that. That was one of my favorite books. And the more I wanted to get these books that were printed before alcohol prohibition ended, because they didn't know it was going to end, and I wanted to see what they thought about it.
Wow.
It was really, and the parallels are sort of spooky. So where are we here?
Yeah, I would agree. In my research, the parallels for alcohol prohibition, what had happened, the most famous example of which would be, the Bloody Valentine Massacre.
Yeah.
You basically had gangs running alcohol in the streets because with prohibition does not stop demand. It does not touch on human nature. It simply is another governmental control mechanism which does not work. The harder they squeeze, the worse the problem gets.
They really had it exactly wrong, and we've done it here too in the drug war, and that is they clamped down on the supply but not the demand. They arrested bootleggers, filled the federal prison with bootleggers, didn't arrest drinkers. And so what that did, if anyone who understands anything about economics, the law of supply and demand, if you clamp down on supply and leave demand alone, the price is going to rise. And some of those bootleggers, is written in some of these books, they would say, we just can't believe how lucky we are. This is such a seller's market. They could charge anything they wanted. And one of my favorite chapters in that book I mentioned, I think it's chapter 17, it's called Routing Rum Row. It's about the Florida East Coast primarily. And Mabel Walker Willebrandt persuaded, she was working for the federal government now, of course. She persuaded a young Coast Guard officer to help her by blockading the Florida East Coast, the lower East Coast, because that was referred to as Rum Row, where the big ships would come in from the UK primarily and from Jamaica with rum, and they'd stand off beyond it was a 3-mile limit or the 12-mile limit. I can't recall which. I think it was 3 miles. And little boats would go out and pick the stuff up and bring it in. And she was so proud soon after they'd started this was in the spring of 29. She was so proud that she had driven the price of a case of good liquor in Miami up from $35 to $125. And she thought that was a good thing. And of course, all that does is just enrich criminals.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what we've done now. And that's why it's really important to do something about the supply side as well as you can do the demand side, but something's got to be done about the supply side. They both have to be opened up. And I started writing letters. I've averaged one a month. I've got about 150 letters.
150 published letters in
150
newspapers all across America and beyond?
Yeah.
Awesome.
A little bit in Canada, a little bit in the
What was
UK.
do you remember the first one you wrote?
I do. And that's quite a story all by itself.
Yeah.
I sent it. I'd just gone online, and I didn't know much of anything about email addresses and websites. Anyhow, I did email it, though. I wrote it to the St. Pete Times, and I emailed it. And it was a good letter, and so I waited to see it in print. It never showed up. After about 2 weeks or so, it was less than that, about 10 days. I got an email from St. Petersburg, Russia. They said I had emailed it to the wrong email address. I didn't notice that little RU on the end of the email address. Yeah. The guy was kind enough he spoke English, and to tell me that I'd sent it to the wrong place. So I turned right around and sent it to the right place, and they published it.
Oh, that's great.
That got me off to a good start. Good positive feedback. So then I went on from there, and I have one of my best friend from high school really tells me I should take all those letters and pull them together and make a book out of them.
Yeah, that'd be great.
You can watch the progression of how I was learning too, because I started off kind of stupid, ignorant anyhow, and as I learned, there was a time when I
baseline citizen. You had a baseline understanding. You were a baseline citizen with just never think about it, never crosses your mind that somewhere right now someone is being arrested for a drug and someone profited off of it, and they don't care about the consequences of what happens to that person.
Yeah, pretty much. I as I look back, I started from zero, and that's pretty much where the American public is now. Any person picked at random, chances are he didn't know any more than I knew then. And I know how surprised I was as the years passed to learn things that I never believed, but I knew them. I learned them as fact, and so I realized, hey, any person in the U.S. picked at random probably doesn't know about this because I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
One of them was a kind of a naive thought that I had that when alcohol prohibition ended, I thought that the federal prisoners the bootleggers were let go. But they weren't. They kept serving their sentences out. And I mentioned this to Nora Callahan, and of course this is the November Coalition founder.
Define November Coalition for the listeners if they're not familiar with that organization.
You mentioned it. It is a national organization. It's based in Colville, Washington. That's in the northeastern corner of the state. And their mission is to help the families of drug prisoners. And what got her going was her brother was sentenced to 27 and a half years. That was about 27 years ago, almost. And he's out now.
Wow.
He's out now. And, where was I going with this? She knew they had. And she said, yeah, they did, but they were a lot shorter sentences then. Now, I've met people who have been sentenced.
When did that change?
When did what change?
The laws.
To go for longer sentences?
Yeah.
The biggest change by far was in 1986 and 1988.
Who was president at the time?
Who was that? 86, 88 was Bush, wasn't it? But the guy that really moved it, and people think this is a Republican thing. No. The guy who really moved it was Tip O'Neill, the Speaker of the House.
Is he known as being an alcoholic himself?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Was he?
I don't know. I think all politicians are doing illegal stuff. I think they're selling pills that they know are going to kill people. I think they're drunk half the time.
Old Tip, TP came back. Yeah. They came back from summer break, and he said, and this was a couple of months after Len Bias, a basketball player, I think the University of Maryland, overdosed and died on cocaine. At least they believe that's what it was. And so that summer, everybody was talking about it.
Yeah, his heart popped.
Huh?
His heart popped.
Was that what it was?
Yeah.
It'll hurt you.
Well, someone that large, you're going to have a different heart structure, and some people exceptionally large will have abnormalities that they won't come up until later in life in a very extreme situation, becoming a full-blown pro basketball player. Your body's going to go through extremes that the average citizen will never experience. If you mix in other, even if it's legal prescription drugs, but if you mix in something like cocaine, it's a dangerous situation. What I remember about it is, it affected his heart and it killed him.
I had not heard that. But anyhow,
I could be wrong.
Yeah, probably not. Congress came back from their summer break, and Tip O'Neill said, "Everybody's talking about drugs. We got to do something about drugs before the election, the November election." And I personally know the guy who was the legal counsel for the House Judiciary Committee. He's changed sides, and now he's very much against the drug war. He's been this for about as long as I have, maybe even longer. And then he told the story. But they wrote these mandatory sentencing is it. The mandatory sentencing.
So that mandatory sentencing for all crimes or just crimes involving drugs?
Drugs.
There
are mandatory minimum sentences for rarely for other things at that time. Now there's a few more. They've gone a little bit
weapons
beyond.
Charges, burglaries, shooting someone, stuff like that.
In Florida has, what is it, the 10-20, 5-10-20 or something where if a person uses a gun or shoots somebody and so on.
First strike, second strike, third strike. That's from the Clinton era. The time you're speaking of is when America. What you're talking about, what I see it as is it's another government working with mainstream media to roll out a distraction. Len Bias does too much coke. He's a larger guy, big dude, has a heart problem. It kills him. So everyone's talking about it. Tip O'Neill works with this gentleman to reform the law so that there's mandatory minimums for anything involving drugs. And this is right around the time of DARE.
Yes.
Mrs. Reagan, Ronald Reagan's wife, Nancy, was working with Mel and Betty Sembler as well as Roger DuPont, and they pretty much launched the next level of the war on drugs, which was officially started in 1972 when, at the time, Roger DuPont, medical doctor, acting as the head of the DEA, initiated the real war on drugs. In 1972, they reclassified the plant, cannabis sativa, as a narcotic for what they stated had hallucinogenic and addictive qualities. They lied. They knew the research. Our tax dollars have been used by universities to conduct cannabis research, 165 studies over the years. They know what they were saying was not true. The conflict of interest is very simple. Follow the money trail, people. Roger DuPont, medical doctor of the DuPont family. The DuPont family owns patents on drug test kits. So they rescheduled cannabis because they knew everybody smoked it and it's good for them. They couldn't have that. What it said on the report, on the study, which motivated them to do this for one of many reasons, is that cannabis prevents mind control. And the government is known in MK Ultra to use television mind control programming to subvert the masses, usually for political issues or to drum up a battle cry for war. So Roger DuPont, MD, in the interest of making his family wealthier, worked to get cannabis rescheduled so that they could piss test every government employee. The U.S. government is one of the largest employers on the planet with approximately 300,000 people employed. Not that many then, but enough then for the DuPonts to continue making a tremendous amount of money. So if you work for the government, you got to take a piss test. Your money's going in the DuPont family's pockets. That's why they made it illegal. They knew everyone was smoking it because they saw what happened in the 60s when people were waking the funk up. They were smoking and they were demanding freedom and liberty, and they didn't want any more war. They didn't want any drug war. So they reclassified it to shut that down and put more money in the enemy's pockets. That was happening at the same time when they rescheduled, and then they changed all the laws so it's mandatory minimums. It's ridiculous to be locked up for a pound of weed for that long. It's insane. I can't necessarily state about other drugs because I don't like coke. I don't like heroin. I would really much rather never even drink alcohol, but you can't go through life without seeing it on TV in your face. But that's my understanding of how it really went into overdrive.
And there's another factor here, too, and that is that nylon, DuPont and nylon and hemp fiber was on the edge of replacing nylon, which really wasn't in existence much in the late 30s.
Yeah,
just beginning, and they wanted to give it a little bit of an edge.
Strike one.
And they did.
Strike one in the coffin for cannabis, global healer.
Of course, when Nixon signed the Controlled Substances Act, I think it was in '71 he signed it. He did that really the record shows he did it to hold down people that had participated in the social upset of the 60s.
Absolutely. Another control mechanism.
Because he had his own commission, the Schaefer Commission, the governor of Pennsylvania led, and they concluded after 18 months that this stuff really wasn't so bad after all, and the law should be relaxed. And Nixon would have none of it because it didn't do what he wanted to do, which was to hold down people that he didn't like. That was the essence of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of the beast. I don't care who you are, if you're like a rap star or a famous DJ or an athlete or even a wealthy businessman. Money and power gets to people's heads, and it twists them, and the money and the power and the lust, the thirst for absolute control, which victimizes every president. And our nation's founding fathers put measures in place they knew this would happen, and they wanted to prevent it. That's why we have a constitution, so that someone like Nixon can't abuse power, because that's what's happening now. That's what's always happened, and that's why we must fight this fight to get cannabis legalized like it was when our founding fathers made the nation, and it was legal then, and it needs to be, because that was their true vision and intention.
Yeah, there's no rational reason why it should be classified the way it is. There's not, especially when you look at tobacco, legal, alcohol, legal, marijuana doesn't fit. And the others, all those other drugs, the use of those things is minuscule compared to marijuana. That was one of the things that really persuaded me. I saw those two articles you mentioned that said that states that have medical marijuana laws had a reduction in traffic fatalities. 9% it was. In the first year. Lost my train of thought.
Well, also alcohol consumption went down. The brewers based out of Colorado, and one of the main funders of anti-cannabis information is these large brewers, Anheuser-Busch, Coors Light, alcohol companies. They know when people stay home and consume cannabis, as they should, if they choose to do so in their homes, they're not going to go to the bar. They're not going to go to the restaurant and buy beer. They're not going to go drink. Alcohol's addictive. It's horrible. We've all had hangovers, and we feel like literally an elephant sat on our heads. We can hear our liver cells crying. You feel the disgusting taste. You look at your face, and you see wrinkles that weren't there the day before, and you just hate yourself. We know how bad it is. We know how poisonous it is. And guess what? So do the people who sell it to you, which is why they spend to the sum of millions of dollars annually to do their smear campaigns against cannabis. So when you're celebrating, watching the Super Funky Bowl today, consider partaking in something else other than alcohol, because another statistic is the increase of violent crime around this date. Alcohol. People are getting drunk at the Super Funky Bowl, and it's an increase of violence. There's going to be more domestic violence calls. You got people are passionate about their teams winning, and they're getting a little rowdy, a little drunk, and they'll start doing dumb stuff. Yeah, it happens every year.
Yeah, it's so complicated with budgets being cut, police budgets being cut. And this is really one of the most insidious elements of cannabis, especially cannabis prohibition. And that is, there's a lot of money in busting a big grow operation, because they can't much do that. And I don't know in California, in Colorado and Washington, but there's a lot of money in it. And the feds are seizing a lot more property. When I started in this, it was about $500 million a year. They so-called civil forfeiture, the fiction that the drug's responsible for breaking the law. Now it's
define civil forfeiture for the listeners.
Civil forfeiture, as opposed to criminal forfeiture, it's very tough to define it because I don't understand it that well. Mm-hmm. But because
it doesn't make a lick of sense.
It doesn't make much. And now where it started off at $500 million, it's now almost $2 billion a year, and it's jumped up just recently.
Are you speaking in land miles, or are you speaking in dollars? The sum of goods stolen from citizens.
Oh, those are Those are dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Those are dollars of property, not drug property. Those are houses, boats, bank accounts, cash, not the drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what happens to the drugs that are seized?
Mm-hmm.
I think really probably most of it's destroyed. But,
I've seen burn barrels behind my little town's police station where they literally take the bricks of cannabis and throw it in a burn barrel and burn it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What a waste.
What a waste.
They could sell that and have tax money for it.
Yeah, or they could, use it to heal people dying or suffering from terminal illness and, from fluoride poisoning because cannabis decalcifies the body and it's a superfood.
Yeah, so it's got to change. And I'm one of these guys that thinks that the medical marijuana is simply a way to get people's attention.
Mm-hmm.
It's a thing that can probably sell. It's going to sell. And once it does, then the public is going to realize that, hey, the sky didn't fall.
Yeah.
And then they'll be ready for a next step. You've got to get used to the idea. It's taken a long time just to get used to the idea of medical.
Yeah.
And it was going nowhere until a guy like John Morgan, who had, I'm not sure what all of his motives were, and I don't really care. I know what he's trying to do, though, and it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
If he can shake the system up enough and perhaps force the legislature, maybe shame the legislature into doing something, he will have done a huge service.
Yeah.
Because it's the anti-marijuana laws in Florida and everywhere, but especially in Florida.
When we spoke before, in between, seeing each other on the campaign trail, you had mentioned a young lady in Florida, in college. Would you touch on that story? Because that's directly related to cannabis.
This is the one in Tallahassee. This is one that came out, I think it was in 2005 that this happened. And her parents live in Pinellas County. Rachel Morningstar Hoffman, I think. Beautiful young woman. And as near as I can tell, this was in Tallahassee. She had just graduated from FSU. And I'm not so sure what she was doing, but she was selling some pot out of her apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how the word got to the Tallahassee police that this was happening.
She got knocked out.
So they busted her.
Yeah.
And they told her, well, you can get out from under a felony record if you'll help us. And she was a kind of a risk-seeking little girl. Young woman anyhow, and she thought kind of exciting. I mean, I'm thinking I've never met her. I did meet her father, but I have never met anybody else. And so she said, "Yeah, I can do that. I'll help you set up some people if you want to arrest some, drug dealers." They told her we have 2 guys we really are trying to get, and she did. She helped set them up.
Yeah, let's touch on the rationale behind that because it's a very important part for people to understand. We're expressing as though this girl was selling weed and then she narked somebody out. That's what happened to her. That's not what she did. What she did is she got used by the system. Can you touch on your understanding of the law or the change in the way the laws were handled regarding drugs? What is it called? In which they try to leverage the situation so that you can bring down other people.
Well, the people who, in the drug policy reform, refer to it as snitching, but that can mean different things in different situations. But it's where the police, especially, this is with mandatory sentencing in place. This is why mandatory minimum sentencing is so dangerous to society, really. They can threaten the arrestee with a huge sentence unless they cooperate.
Mm-hmm.
Provide substantial assistance. That's the magic word.
Mm-hmm.
They provide substantial assistance, and then they won't be saddled with this felony, and they can do all kinds of things to help her, they say. And so they threatened her that way, and she went right for it. She said, "Sure, I can help you do that." And she tried to set up these guys. She had $13,000 with her to use that to buy cocaine and a gun. And these two guys they were caught pretty quickly, and they were convicted, and they're both in prison in the Florida system probably for life. I'm not so sure whether, I don't think they got the death penalty for life. But they wanted that $13,000. This is the way I read it. Very clear. And they just killed her in a secluded area where they agreed to meet. She lost contact with her handlers. It was rather complicated. This happened one afternoon in May of, I think it was 2005. So that was that. And I wrote some letters on that. I'm not so sure any of them got published. The Tallahassee paper, very, very conservative, very Southern, very traditional. And as far as they were concerned, and as far as most people were concerned, the Tallahassee police had screwed up. Nobody blamed the system. This business of threatening arrestees.
Hey there, buddy, with the joint in your hand. Oh, what's that? You got a bag or two? Oh, you're selling weed because you got a bag or two of weed. You're a weed seller.
Yeah.
We're going to lock you up for 40 years. What? It's a plant. Sorry, buddy. Hey, we'll cut you some slack. We'll knock that down to 10 years if you tell us who you bought it from.
Yeah.
So do you want to go to prison for 40 years? Or when they're intimidating you and scaring you, do you want to try to not go to prison for 40 years? What are you going to do? Well,
it's pretty simple.
A hardened criminal might do his time, but the average person who's scared out of their wits because they know that they're simply consuming a plant, which they should have the right to do so without fear of persecution, they're going to fold, they're going to flip, they're going to freak out, and they're going to say, yeah, get me out of jail. And someone else gets brought into the equation, and the profits are increased because the main point here is that we have an incentivized justice system. There is an incentive to meet a minimum capacity of a prison. That incentive is financial. The Prison Management Corporation has a contract which states if you don't have 80%, you pay us this much on top. So they make more money coming and going, whether the prison is full or not. It's a scam. It's using humans as a product to make profit from a system that doesn't work and is broken. And the other way they manipulated the law is by these mandatory minimum sentences and basically using coercion against the people, strong-arming them with these rewritten laws. And the entire thing is incentivized. So you're a sheriff. There's 65 sheriffs in Florida. You make a pot bust, it's like getting a tip as a server. You're going to get a bonus. Our tax money is going to a sheriff who makes, on average, anywhere, depending on the size of his municipality, anywhere from $65,000 a year to $85,000 a year. Base pay, free car, free gas, maybe some free donuts if he's good-looking and the people like him. The other thing is that he's going to make money, that sheriff will make money, by only getting in police under his department that do what he says. And what he says is go bust people for weed. And they're going to get basically taxpayer dollar tips. And that's what they go after. They don't go after real crime. They go after something that's never going to go away. The demand's never going to go away. And they do it to make money. And they don't care about the lives they're destroying.
That's right. They don't. There was the worst part of this is if they go after a high-level guy, he has enough money to hire lawyers, he can often get off. If they go after a middle-level guy, in theory, the law originally was sold to Congress on, hey, we'll get these middle-level guys or these low-level guys, and they'll turn in their suppliers. Well, it doesn't happen. It does not happen that way. If they get a middle-level guy, he's not going to turn in an upper-level guy because he might get killed.
Yeah.
He'll turn in a low-level guy, and the police don't mind that because they're interested in head count.
Yeah, that's what they want. They don't really want to go after the guy over the border in Mexico.
There is a situation that's almost laughable that happened, I think it was about 3 years ago. It was west of Nashville on I-40. There were traffic stops. Not traffic stops as such. Well, yes, they were. Where they'd stop a car on a pretext, a light out or a no license plate or something. But they were only working one side of I-40, not the other side. They were working on the side, not the side that carried the drugs. They were working the side on that side that carried the money.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't care about the drugs, but they wanted the money. This was exposed by a TV station in Nashville, and I wish I could remember which network it was, which person it was. But
where the officers of the peace were pulling people over and taking their cash and not even.
Yeah, well, they weren't interested in drugs,
Yeah.
so they were only getting the side of 540. The westbound side had the money. Yes, I'm not quite sure how that happened, but that's the way it was. Everybody knew it, and that was an expose on a TV station in Nashville, and I think the practice probably ended soon after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was highway robbery.
That's all it was. That's all it was. That's all they care about. Yeah, it's too bad. Not all, but most.
Do you have a personal story or something you'd like to share about 2013's journey? About a personal story you could share with the people? What's the good, the bad, the ugly about the campaign trail?
In working on the United for Care project to put the amendment on the ballot in November for medical marijuana. It was a learning experience. I met a lot of people. Of course, the people who would sign this would generally be people that had a story to tell, and they did. They had stories that sort of knocked your socks off. I'd never heard before, for instance, that it would work for, migraines. I hadn't heard. That was one of the first things that's kind of surprised me, and now it's become pretty understood, widespread, that yes, it does do a lot for migraines. It does a lot for epilepsy. I'd never heard that, and of course that's huge now.
Yeah, there's lots of diseases we're not hearing about because when it's kept illegal, the people who made it illegal in the first place, the patent holders, they're going to suppress the freely available grow your own cure alternative.
Yes, they are. Yep. I don't really have it. It was just one big long week, working so hard.
Incredible. I know. I saw you out there.
But it's
incredible.
I'm 80 now. 80. I'm ready to, as I said, I'm ready to slow down.
I thank you, and I thank God that you didn't yet, because we needed your love and your passion and your assistance on the campaign trail, and other people like you out there. You know,
people like Bianca Garza.
A absolute dynamo of energy. If they could somehow wire her and channel her, we wouldn't need petroleum anymore. We really wouldn't.
She was just a little she's a little small and she's thin. So on a per pound basis, you have a lot of capability there. That was great fun meeting some of these folks, and that's not done. This is gonna keep.
Oh yeah, they're going to try to back us into the walls. It's going to be harder to sway the vote than it was just to get the petitions. You know.
Yeah.
We can't be complacent, people. The education will continue right here Sundays at 4:20 with invaluable guests like Mr. John Chase, as we will continue to articulate my motto: THC, truth, history, consciousness. That's right. The Captain Cannabis Show, truth, history, consciousness. Do like this inspiring gentleman did. Buy the books. Do the research online. Find out the truth and the facts for yourself, why things are the way they are. Follow the money trail all the way into the government. And you will probably want to join us in our fight to get legalized medicine so that doctors can help people with, as you said, migraines, epilepsy, AIDS, IBS, cancer, glaucoma.
Pain in general.
Pain. Who isn't in pain? How many football players are in pain? All of them? Do you think that they should be able to smoke a little weed and go to bed and feel better and not be addicted to all the stomach churning, disgusting, opiate-derived? Because that's the competition. I mean, let's be real. We've been in Afghanistan for how long? 12 years? About 12 years.
Yeah, 12
and
years.
Since we've been there, guess who took over the production of the poppy? And our soldiers and our tax dollars are going to... Are we burning down poppy fields? No. We're saying that, hey, it's not going in the hands of the Taliban anymore. They don't want to get rid of the poppy because the poppy is the main ingredient in legal pain-relieving narcotics. You know, we used to have one type of pain reliever, and now there's like 40 on the market. And that's why our soldiers are there. They're not going after terrorists. They're controlling the supply of opium. So they're pharmaceutical sponsors who have them there can make their profits. Look it up, because when he was talking about when they started the drug war, in the 80s with Reagan, with DARE, that's right after that, the second Bush, who was in the White House, they passed new laws regarding Medicare so that people with taxpayer money could get their prescription pharmaceuticals. And look how much money that the Bush family and the other pharmaceutical companies made between 2008 and now. And they started with one, something like Percocet, and now there's literally 40 different, legalized heroin. I mean, that's what we're talking about, is they take the poppy and they turn it into drugs like Percocet, Xanax, Darvocet, Oxycontin, Oxycodone. If you've lived in Florida in the last 10 years, you know what happened, where people came from all over America to go to a pill mill, and people were dying every day, and all the doctors knew it, and they didn't care, and they kept dealing. So shame on you, doctors, and shame on you, doctors, for not wanting to offer those same people who really legitimately need pain relief and need medicine. Shame on you for not supporting the right for them to do so without dying, because they should be able to do so with cannabis. That's it. Do you have anything to say in closing, Mr. Chase?
I think you've covered it.
Beautiful. It was an honor and a pleasure to have you here.
Glad to do it.
Thank you for tuning in, people. That's it. That's a wrap. That's the Captain Cannabis Show. Enjoy your super funky bowl. Don't overindulge in the alcohol. Put some hemp seeds on your nachos. Fight the good fight. Thank you, Washington. Thank you, Colorado. The only thing that's going to be burning down when one of those teams win is some big fat joints. God bless America, and thanks for tuning in.